Hey folks, welcome back to our Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark, and today we're taking a look at Talos Collapse. Talos Collapse is a self-published title. It's for 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up, and games range anywhere from 120 to 180 minutes. Collapse. Collapse indeed. The world has been torn apart, and the only thing holding it together are portals into other realms. All the races are on the verge of extinction. You take on the role of a leader, trying to lead your people to the stronghold of Talos. And as you move ever closer to the city of Talos in ultimate victory, you will be encountering realms full of challenges, full of inhabitants, full of perils. Along the way, a vast army is not going to be enough. You will have to evolve your character with new skills, and you will have to cooperate with newly discovered gods in order to bring your people to safety. Now, this game has a lot of setup and a lot of things you have to be aware of, but we're not going to do a deep dive here because there's some really interesting parts of the game we want to get to. But just know that there are scenario cards that will lead you through a lot of the setup. In this case, we're doing the basic scenario for Talos. And it does outline if it's a 2-player game, or a 3 or 4-player game, and how to set up the board. The board is set up with these various tiles that create the world or the portals that you'll be moving through. So some of the basics of setup, though, is that you will be choosing a leader as well as a race deck to go along with that leader. Now, you have a series of tokens that represent 2 types of buildings. You have mage towers and castles. And based on what type of building you want to start in your home area, will determine what type of cards you get to pull from that race deck into your reserve. So if you're starting with a mage tower, you're going to start maybe heavily in magic. And if you're starting with a castle, you're going to have a lot of fighters and archers, things of that nature. Now, the game does allow for leader creation. And really what that means is that you can basically build your type of class and skills that you want to assign to your leader. But the rule book does outline some already prepared for you to begin with, which is suggested, especially as you get familiar with the game. And it's what we did as well. So we start with the warlord and the archmage, along with the corresponding skills to go with them. And each player has a series of different tokens they'll start with, as well as potentially some mana based on what buildings you start with. And another note on buildings is that the building you do place down, castle or the mage tower, will start at a level 2. So this will help dictate or show you what type of characters you're going to be pulling from your race deck into your reserve. So as an example, this leader has chosen a castle to start with, level 2. And you're going to pull 2 warriors, a level 1 and a level 2 warrior, as well as 2 archers, a level 1 and a level 2 archer. And these are going to be your cards that you're starting with, your warriors basically, starting in your reserve deck for future battles. One of the interesting items in this game is that each player is going to receive a mana meter. Now, again, this is very much prototype. The real ones in the game are going to be plastic. This is a laser cut wood piece, but it's beautiful. It tracks your turns, it tracks your income, but it also is going to track some points related to being good, selfish, or evil. And getting maximum points in either one of these areas basically allow you to get additional skills and evolve your character. Now, the way that's going to work is through events, which takes us over to all the different cards which are going to be represented in the different realms that you're going to move into. There are events that will be pulled and encounters will happen. Now the last piece, the big piece worth mentioning about setup, is this battle board. This is where fights happen. You have lanes that you will be working in. You have the front and the back in those lanes. And there's potential you can add a 4th lane here as well, depending on what is happening in the game. Now, the thing is that it's not just against creatures in different realms that you run into. This could be used in battles against your fellow players at the table. Now, each turn of the game has 5 phases to it. You have the starting phase, you have the development phase, movement, adventure, and battle. The starting phase is all about gaining income, and that income is generated, mana generated based on your buildings that you have in play, the different levels of the building, and how many buildings you actually have out in the world. will determine how much mana you gain on your turn. Now, the thing with mana is that you do have a maximum. You can only ever get 10 points. You also get to heal characters that may have been battle. You will place a healing token on each of those in this phase of the game as well. Next up is the development phase, and this really is broken into two stages. You have building and you have mysticism, which relates to the gods. But really, we're going to take a look at building first because this is where you're going to be spending the mana that you've acquired. And there's a handy reference guide on this awesome sheet, the player guide, that shows what everything costs. And it really ramps up as you move from level 1 to level 4 of a building. And again, you have castles and you have mage towers. And based on the different levels and the different types of buildings you have out in play will determine what cards you pull from the race deck and put into your reserve. And a couple notes about building is that you can't obviously build where there's an enemy leader or battles happening, things like that. But you have to build in an adjacent spot to buildings you already own. Now, mysticism is all about cooperating or working with the gods. And you're trying to acquire a god sheet, specifically if you don't have one. And the way that works is that you have to have a mage tower and you have to have a character point in that type of god. Character points, again, are either good, evil, or selfish. And those are going to be acquired later in the adventure mode when you activate an event and you have to make a choice. Now, the thing is, these will also give you special skills, or not skills really, more spells and prayers. Also, if you already have a god sheet, this is the phase of the game where you would activate the prayer that is available. Now, using these gods is truly cooperating with them throughout the game. And the thing is that it might be advantageous for you to swap them out at some point because you need some special ability. And the way that works is that you have to have a worship token if you already have a sheet. You have to have a worship token in order to swap it out. So these gods have vastly different powers and definitely work in mysterious ways. And now as you perform and work within those character points that are related to a god, you potentially can gain perfection. And if you do, you have the option potentially of stealing a god sheet from another player who has less points in that character's ability. Now let's take a look at movement. And this is really what you're going to be doing to edge ever closer to the city of Talos in the middle and ultimately victory. But you have to move through these zones, levels 1s, 2, and 3s to get there. Now, if you have open zones that have no threat tokens and no opposing leaders, you can move up to 2 spaces through those zones. And the way that works is that you're looking for the white edge on the tile. And these are the portals that you can move through as you move across the zone. Now, you can also move and invade a space by flipping it over randomly and positioning it. Now, if you have a terraforming token, then you can rotate it into maybe a more advantageous position for you to move into that space. But once you're there, that is when you'll move into the adventure mode. But if you moved across zones that were already open and available, then you're not going to encounter a zone the same way. And then we move to the adventure phase. And really, this is probably my favorite part of the game. It has a bit of pick your own path going on. So the player to your left will pull an event card based on the realm that you have discovered and moved into. So in this case, we're looking at the Lowlands realm. And the story here is that you have arranged to be married to the daughter of a local king. She approaches you in the middle of the night and asks to cancel the wedding because she is in love with someone else. Now you have 3 choices here, and based on how you decide will determine what type of character point you're going to get. It could be evil, selfish, or good. So the choices here are touched by her story, you cancel the ceremony. Number 2, you bargain with her beloved. And number 3, you refuse. She belongs only to you. So on the back side of the card will determine what happens based on your choice. And it shows the different types of character points that you'll receive. And in this case, we've got the first response would have been a good response. Second would be selfish. And the third would be evil. So in this case, the first response, the girl expresses her sincerest gratitude and gives you a jewel necklace. Pretty good. Now, the second response is selfish. And Nadal is a common villager. He gives you a family relic, a brass lamp. Now, that's pretty awesome actually. Relics are powerful and can really help you throughout the game, but it is still selfish in order to use this particular path. And then lastly, you can go in all evil and say, in total despair of the inevitable separation from her beloved, the princess takes her own life. Oh, rough stuff. But it's going to add a +2 to the die roll when you have to battle creatures, which we'll get to. But it does give you a new skill card of a level 1. So it's not always bad to go the evil route, but it is interesting choices to be made as you move through this adventure mode. And of course, whatever character point you acquire will be added to your mana meter. Now, as you saw in that previous example, if you'd chosen evil, you would have acquired that skill card. And those character points you've been acquiring through different events will allow you to actually pick one of the skills on the skill card. But you have to spend the points in order to do it. And some are very costly and some are pretty reasonable. So in this particular example, we have 2 sides, and some of the skills are a 1-point skill, and some of the skills here are 3, but they can get even more expensive than that as you move up through the different levels of skill cards. Now, these are going to add to your character or your leader as you advance through the game and just give you even more abilities. And it is really key because this is one of the ways that you evolve your character and make it more powerful. Now, before we jump into battles, let's take a look at spells and artifacts because these might play into what you do in a battle. Typically, battles start right after the adventure phase. After you've made a choice on an event card, you would move and then engage in battle. Not always, but typically. So the thing here is that if you go back to your God card, this is where spells are. And you have levels 1 through 4 here, which are directly related to your different level of Mage Tower. So that will dictate which spells that you can potentially activate. And then throughout the game, again, it's very important that it might be very advantageous for you to swap up what gods you're aligned with in order to aid you as you move through this world. Now, these powerful spells are key to success in a lot of the game. I found them to be very, very worthwhile having and using frequently. And then artifacts, there's a couple different ways to get artifacts, but really the big thing about artifacts is when you've gone into a level 3 zone and you've won the battle. Well, then you're going to look for your advantage level, which is the enemies you've defeated minus the characters or cards that you lost in that battle. You're going to pull that many artifact cards from the deck, pick one, and put the others back. Now, these cards are also very powerful. Oh my gosh, artifacts are fantastic. So you definitely want to utilize them as much as possible in these battles. All right, let's talk battle. Now, some of the combatants are going to be using talents throughout the game, and this handy reference guide outlines all of those. So you want to keep those in mind as you enter into battle as well. Now, this guide also shows when you actually roll to figure out what combatants are coming out in the battle. Depending on what tile was flipped over and what dice you roll, will determine what characters are going to be engaged in this battle. So here we roll a 1, and we're going to get 3 villains coming out because it's a level 1 tile that we're exploring. So this is the overall battle grid. You occupy one side, your opponent occupies the other, be it a player at the table or villains or enemy creatures that you've encountered as you flipped over a tile. Now, the thing here is that you have the front row and back row, so there are definitely rules that apply as you deploy your figures. So in this case, we've got the 3 mages that we're going to put out, and you can stack level 1 mages into a single slot, but you might have them hang back or, maybe have one up front, but they can really hit any creature across the way. And so here's the grid deployed with enemy and your forces ready to go to action. And I have the cards oriented just so you can see better on the camera. Otherwise, you might face them towards each other as they battle. So here you can see all the forces deployed. You have the enemy, which is the AI, which will be controlled by the player on your left. And then you have your forces. Now, for warriors who have the sword icon, they're going to attack the closest adjacent enemy. And then if you've got mages, which is a little swirly icon, and archers with the crossbow, they have ranged attacks, and they can shoot across the field to the back row or to an adjacent to that next row over. But they can't go 3 rows over. But you've got some flexibility definitely with magic and archers for that ranged attacks. Warriors are a little more obviously in close combat kind of situation. So that first part of the battle is known as the preparation phase, as you get ready to battle it out. And there are tokens to help you determine when characters have been used in battle. You just flip these over. Now, before you move this attack mode, where you are moving and attacking and doing damage and things, you also want to remember to take into account all the different things you might be doing with the cooperation of the gods, or even skills and abilities that your characters have, which are going to vary between game to game. Now, each of the characters out here also have passive and active abilities that you're going to possibly be tapping into, but the basics of battle. The first thing you might do is move and position your characters in a different way. So this mage is going to attack here. You're going to look at the defense value of 3. You look at your power here. You find that he's going to do 6 points of damage, and you do 6 points of damage, and this character has now been used. And so obviously in the course of the battle, your goal is to reduce your enemy to 0. And health is in the bottom right corner, and you will move this way and continue until you've exhausted all the different characters in the battle. And then the next round will begin, and you'll go through the whole steps. Battles can rage on for several turns. Now, it's important to note that you can choose at the end of this particular battle to retreat and get out of dodge, so to say, or you can let this battle continue round after round. Now, I may have oversimplified the battle situation a little bit just to give you that flavor of it. And the thing is that battles, like I said, can rage round after round. So in that case, if you do that, you will skip the adventure phase and the new battle setup. You'll just continue with the battle you are engaged in. And so the game will continue this way, round after round, as you inch ever closer to the city of Talos. And again, along the way, you're going to be gaining skills, you're going to be gaining artifacts, new powers, alliances with gods, all in an effort to be the ultimate leader and bring your people to safety. All right, folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen here has been in prototype form. So keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that still may occur. Now, with that said, I think my favorite part of this game that I really enjoyed was that adventure phase, where it almost feels like not just picking a direction, but it has a bit of that choose your adventure story mode happening as well. And I love that in games, but it does also play into how your character evolves and how you're going to spend those character points. Very interesting stuff. But ultimately, folks, if this looks like a game that would be of interest to you, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support. So I think that's it for me, and until next time, we'll see you at the table.
Thanks so much for watching another Dice Tower video. If you enjoy our videos, subscribe to the channel for more fun, comprehensive board game coverage. Also, consider joining us at one of our events. Come to Dice Tower Retreat, a small, intimate gathering where gaming is king. Join us for Dice Tower Cruise, the largest board game cruise. Attend Dice Tower West in Las Vegas for gaming fun on the West Coast, or Dice Tower East in Orlando, in sunny Florida. Dice Tower Conventions, the friendliest gaming conventions on Earth. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.